All right, so I want to go over some test information and some strategies with you that you may or may not have heard before. Maybe some of it, probably not all of it, but some of you will be taking the SAT, some of you will be taking the PSAT. So this is about the math sections. I have nothing up here about the English sections, but the tests are very similar as far as content and organization, of course. There are more math questions on the SAT than there are on the PSAT. On both of them, you have a no calculator and a calculator section. The entire test can be completed accurately and within the time limits without a calculator at all, though. Nothing actually requires the use of it, or even does it help that much necessarily. It's more kind of a safety net probably for you than anything. You might, even on the calculator section, feel like you don't even need it that much. You will be provided a calculator from the school. Like I told you the other day, but if you have your own and you would rather use the one that you have, that is fine as long as it's one of the ones that are legal, but that's what most of y'all would bring anyway. But it is going to be cleared before and after the test. So if you have programs on there that get cleared off, you can always re-download them, but if you don't even want that to happen, then just use the calculator that's provided for you. And last period somebody said, are you sure we're getting it? Yes. And I know those of you that are juniors last year, you did not. We did not have enough to give to the 10th graders. We only had enough for 11th and 12th. But this year we got some borrowed and got some more bought, and so we're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel. We will be able to give them to the 10th graders as well. Freshmen will have to bring it in. But yes, you will have a calculator. But on the SAT, the non-calculator, you have about 1 minute and 15 seconds per question and about 1 minute and 27 seconds per question on the PSAT. And then the same amount of time per question on both of the tests. Now, of course, some of these questions will take you a whole lot less time than that. Some you'll need more because this is just an average, but it kind of balances out. And you may not be able to get to every single question in both sections, and that's okay too. You do what you can and try and do it well, right? So, process of elimination. I know you've been talked to about this a ton in test-taking strategies, but it's even more helpful on these types of tests. You want to get rid of as many wrong answer choices as you can before answering the question. Wrong answers are usually easier to find. And look for opposites, and this actually comes up a lot on the PSAT, on the SAT, where the end of the question or the end of the answer might have, one will have 1 and one will have -1 or something, 3 and -3, whatever. And before you even work the problem itself, you might be able to determine which one it has to be out of those two and let you eliminate some before you worry about anything else. Try to eliminate the wrong answers before you start. But when you eliminate them and you mark them out, don't mark them out beyond recognition in case you change your mind and realize you should have marked it out and now you can't even. Super important also, if you're getting advice from somebody that has taken the SAT or PSAT before and they're like, look, if you don't know, you don't want to guess because they're going to take off 1/4 of a point. That is no longer true. I think we're far enough away from that type of scoring by now that there's not that misconception very much anymore. But just in case somebody puts something in your brain the morning of the test, just know that that's not right. The AP test used to be scored that way too, but they haven't been in a few years. So it does you no good just to leave something blank. If you answer it, you have a chance of actually getting it right. It drives me nuts when y'all have multiple choice stuff and you leave some of them blank. Pick a letter. Just pick your favorite letter. If you can't, you try and narrow it down, but if you can't, and there's really nothing special about C, when in doubt, pick C. Really, you just pick your favorite letter, but be consistent. If you don't like C, but you like B, then on all the ones that you have to guess on, you choose B. So the more consistent you are with your guess, the more likely you are to actually get some of those right, even though you had no clue. So there's nothing magic about C, just pick the same one, unless you're making an educated guess is different. I'm talking about just guessing. So yeah. Guess. After process of elimination, don't just go to the question willy-nilly. We're going to slow down. We'll look at that here in just a second too. All right, so write in your test booklet. So you use your pencil and you actually write stuff down. You mark out wrong answers. You work out the math. Nobody's checking your work. I'm not saying you have to show all of your work and box the final answer and all that type of stuff. You ain't got time for that anyway. But some of this stuff down. Trying to do everything in your head is never a good idea. Maybe for one of you, but most people, no, not a good idea. No one's going to read what you write, so it doesn't matter. Plus, you get on the PSAT, you get your booklet back, so you can see what you actually did write. The SAT, you're not going to get that, but the PSAT, you get your booklet back. Draw a diagram. So if there's not a picture, draw one, and that's not limited to geometry. There's reasons that you could draw stuff for other things as well. This is a very important one right here, okay, because you've been told a lot by me. Don't go by the way it looks, especially if I draw it. You can't go by the way looks. But on the SAT and the PSAT, the figures are drawn to scale. Okay? They are, unless you're told that they're not. Okay, it'll say, so it says, trust your eye and use your eyes. Every figure on the SAT and PSAT is drawn to scale unless it says, note, figure not drawn to scale, written below it. So line segments that appear to be the same length are, an obtuse angle that looks obtuse is. But if it says not drawn to scale, you can't trust anything. All right, so if it's not, you could redraw it scale to help you if you know what it should look like. But either way, know that if it says that, you can't trust anything, that lines that look parallel may not be, and angles that look acute may be obtuse. It may be, you know, like I drew it, and it just looks totally wrong. But, you know, and it's not necessarily done that way to confuse you, but just make sure you're paying attention to that. So it doesn't have to tell you it's drawn to scale. If it doesn't say it's not, then it is, and you can go by the, you don't want to just answer the question purely by the way it looks, but it should help you in the process, hopefully. So slow down. It's very difficult to finish all the problems and maintain accuracy. So slow down a little bit. Take that extra second to think about how to work instead of just jumping in and doing math. And answer fewer questions correctly instead of guessing the entire lot. So better if you answer 75% of the questions on the test correctly than if you answer all of them and only get half of them. Choose which questions to answer first. You don't have to complete the test sections in order. You can't jump from one section to another, like English to math or calculator to non-calculator. But of course, you can jump around in the section. If you're stuck on something, circle it and go back. But circle it so you can find it and you don't spend time looking for it. But don't spend 5 minutes staring at a question that is no hope. Because some of them are harder than the others, and you don't get more points for the harder ones. So get all the easy ones you can. You always go for that. Use the order of difficulty. Some of you may not know this, but the SAT and PSAT math sections are ordered from easier. It's not straight up sort where number 2 is definitely better than number 1. It's kind of loosely sorted that way. But if you're working in the first part of either section and you feel like it's kind of easy and there's obvious answers, those might be correct. But if you're in like the last part of those sections and you feel like it's kind of easy and obvious, that's probably a trap answer, and you want to be a little bit more careful with that. And so if you're spending time staring at a question at the end of the section and you haven't answered some at the beginning, go back to the beginning, because you're more likely to be able to get some of those knocked out and get them right. Cross-check your ovals. If you have time, you may not have time, but if you have time, just double-check that you bubbled it in correctly, especially if when you're going back and forth and if you've skipped around. I got these tips from multiple things that I kind of blended them together. One of the things that I left off that came up a couple times was wait until the end to bubble. And I think that's a very bad piece of advice, because when time is up, it's up. And if you hadn't bubbled anything, guess what? You haven't bubbled anything, and that's it. So I'm kind of surprised that advice is even out there. But pay attention to the time, though. I know most of you don't wear a watch, and if you do, it's some sort of smart watch that you probably won't be able, or not probably, that you won't be able to have on with you. Borrow a watch. Even if you don't know how to tell time like big boys and girls, you don't need to, because you can just use it as a timer. If you have an analog watch and you're not really ever sure what time it is, but when they start the time, they're like, okay, you got 25 minutes. Make the watch say noon. Then you're really just using it as a timer, because you don't really care what time it really is. And then when it's 45 minutes, put it back at noon. Now you got until, whatever the hour is, 45, right? Follow the second hand. Hopefully you can at least do that. But that'll just help you with the time. The teacher is supposed to keep you apprised of the time, but I think the official instructions only say like once. So if it's a 25-minute section, I'll tell you when you have 5 minutes left. I usually throw in a couple extra. I don't like to interrupt your thoughts too much, but I know that you're usually panicked about time. But the teacher you have, they may just do it that once. They may not even do it, because, who knows? We've talked about it, some people just can't follow the rules. I don't have a clock in my room. I may be the only teacher that doesn't, but if I would make sure I had one up for something like that, or at least a timer on the board or something. But everybody may not have a timer on the board, especially if they're not in their own room and they can't make this stuff in their work right, which is unfortunately something we run into a lot. But pay attention to the time. Do something that you can, keep up with the time with. Don't second guess yourself. I know that's way easier said than done. But trust your gut. Statistics prove that the first answer choice is usually correct. Do not go back through the test and change your answers unless you have found evidence that you were absolutely incorrect. If you're looking back through your stuff and you see that you put 2 times 3 equals 5, please go back and second guess yourself, because you're wrong, okay? Or you realize you did this totally wrong process, but if you're sitting there overthinking it, you just need to move on and just hope that you were right, or you might be changing something right to something that's wrong. And again, we're all pretty good at overthinking things. All right, so here's an example that you don't have to write down. We're just going to talk through this together. I am quite certain that everybody in here is completely capable of solving this correctly. Would you agree? Like, we can do this. It's not that bad. We know what to do. And if it's a little small and you can't see it in the back, sorry, I don't know why. It's probably not big enough. But we're not going to work this out completely. You're going to look at these. If I do 2 times 4n cubed, that gives me 8n cubed, right? And then 3 times negative 7n cubed is going to give me 21n cubed, right? So together, those are the only cubes I'll have, yes? That's going to give me 29n cubed. I just eliminated a and b. Now I'm going to look at 2 times 8. That's 16. I'm going to look at negative 3 times 9. That's negative 27. What does that give me? Negative 11. What's my answer? D. So although you're capable of it, even if there's no chance you would mess anything up, is it going to take you time to write all that stuff out and then combine your stuff and rewrite it? Yes. And then we all know there's some of us that could accidentally write something wrong down, and then you're all lost in it and you don't even know what the heck's going on, and none of that is important. And this is what I was talking about earlier with the ends just being different. That's all I had to look at. And these numbers in here are all the same. It's just the signs that are different, but I don't even care what that is because I don't need to spend my time on it. All right? So working smarter and not harder. And that's that extra second to think about it before you do it instead of just seeing it and jumping in and distributing because you know how to distribute. Good for you. Nobody cares. I mean, this is not really what we're testing here. But even just doing this part and getting that answer, are you still showing that you know how to do the process? Yeah, you really are. And so just think about things like that, okay? The next thing I'm going to show you, Mr. Richardson shared with me yesterday. I know you can't read the sentence at the top, but it says this graphic shows the average number of points gained from the PSAT to the SAT, or for some of you from the PSAT last year to the PSAT this year, with the hours spent practicing on Khan Academy. This is a diagram, or this is a graph from the College Board website because they are partnered with Khan Academy, because Khan Academy isn't just some random online thing. If you don't practice at all, okay, you haven't practiced at all since the last time you took it, you're still probably going to show about a 60-point increase just because you know more, you've practiced more, your brain's matured more, like you're just better at things, and so it's just kind of the natural progression. If you spent 6 hours of practice on Khan Academy, you should see about a 90-point increase. 20 hours, about a 115-point increase. And that's an average. For some of you, I would imagine it could be a whole lot more because that little bit of practice could clear up some little things that could help you on a whole bunch of questions, right? And of course, this is just an average and it could help you more or less, whatever. But it is helpful. And so I'm hoping, since we got into it yesterday some, and I know some of you spent most of the time trying to get logged in since you hadn't done it in 4th period, but got in there yesterday and got in there, we're going to get in there again today, that you are more likely to actually get back in it before Wednesday. Okay, and that's what I want, is you to spend some more time on what you need, not just problems that I give you that we all need to look at, that sort of thing. But I'm going to put some stuff in Schoology, some links that just has some more information, kind of like this stuff. Not a ton, but stuff I'd like for you to read before the test. I'll send out a remind when that's done. Also in Khan Academy, I can assign things, and I can assign problems and homework. And it may say that it's homework. I don't know what it looks like on your end, but I'm not assigning anything for you to work through. But there's PSAT and SAT information built into Khan as well. And you could find it if you dug for it. I don't know how easily that comes up for you. So if I assign it to you, then you can see it pretty easily. And just some more info type stuff for you to think about before you do that. But there are things specific on the test that could help you. See, so for instance, there's questions that come up like, if it says like, we have 2, there's a ratio of 2 to 3, and then blah, 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 and X to Y. And then they ask you they ask you something, right? And the question looks all weird because it's written like this. Well, mathematically, what is this? 2/3. If you just change all of those ratios, but change them correctly, to fractions, and just change them in the question goes from being confusing and weird to super easy, because then you can just handle what's going on with it. So know how to read them, know how to think about it for that extra second, not a minute, because you don't have an extra minute, before you jump in and just start doing stuff. All right. If you did not come to Mav time today, I did more than just the systems of equations stuff, and I did record it, so the video will be on YouTube later, and I will put the PDF of the problems that we worked in Schoology, because there were some other things like understanding what to do with consecutive odd integers. They like questions like that, and some other things that come up to kind of simplify what's going on, that if you wanted to follow along and spend any time looking at that. And the questions, the PDF with the questions has the answers at the end too. You don't even have to print it off. You could just kind of work them out if you wanted to, and see, you know, what you can do with that. And in the video, I didn't work through all of them, but I jumped around. But you could always just check yourself with the answer key too if you wanted to. All right. Anybody have any questions for me about anything? All right. So 4-day weekend in this test. Very bad planning on the district's part, but on the weekends, and especially a 4-day weekend, you spend even more time staying up late and sleeping late, right? And then your sleep gets all off, and then you got to come back to school, and then it's just not a good situation for you on a normal day. Now you got to come back to school and take a really important test. So like for real on Tuesday night, try to get to bed at a decent hour. For real on Wednesday morning, eat breakfast. You need some protein for some brain food so that you're not just, you know, conking out during the reading sections of the test, because, you know, and then especially if you're, you know, reading questions and falling asleep too, that's bad. But I know those reading passages sometimes, if you hadn't had your protein that morning, that's not good. So does everybody still get free breakfast here? Yeah, you get free breakfast. I realize it's not like, you know, a gourmet breakfast, but yes, everybody, you get free breakfast every single day. So take advantage of it. There got to be something in that line that you could eat, right? So eat something and be ready for that test, okay? Any questions at all? Yes, ma'am. Okay.
There was one question about like median and mode. And it would like show you a graph, and it would be like the median is equal to the mode, or the median is more than the mode. And
okay. The whole shifting thing. Okay. Yeah. So I had a graphic that I put up yesterday. I don't know if I showed y'all, but somebody was asking me about that, because that was covered on the SAT thing on Saturday, and a couple of people had asked me about that. And it's the shifting and the median and the mode, and it's a little. So I'll put a little diagram up here in just a minute, and you can maybe copy it down on this little scratch paper, and then that can kind of help you understand what it looks like. And I think once you see the graphic, you can kind of have that picture in your mind about what's happening and that sort of thing. Does that make sense? That's a good question. Anything else? If you have any other statistics questions, you're going to have to ask somebody else. I can answer that one. I'm not good with the statistics stuff. All right, we're good? All right.